My journey through love, heartache, and renewal. I never anticipated the twists my life would take when I decided to marry Cassandra. At the start, everything seemed perfect. We had a solid relationship and felt optimistic about our future together. However, as time went on, things began to unravel in ways I never expected. 2 years into our marriage, we started having significant arguments about once a month. These fights were exhausting, but I was determined to make things work. I believed that our strong start meant we could overcome any obstacles. I suggested couples therapy, but after just one session, Cassandra refused to go back. It seemed the therapist's impartiality wasn't what she wanted. Despite her newfound temper, which I assumed might be linked to her father's passing, she never became violent. Instead, our home was filled with loud arguments. Over time, we settled into a pattern of mere coexistence. There were still good moments, but they were overshadowed by the tension. I was still deeply in love with her, but I knew if things didn't improve, divorce was inevitable. I wasn't ready to give up, as I believed marriage shouldn't be discarded easily, barring severe issues like abuse or infidelity. At work, I was a mid-level employee who often traveled to other states. During one such trip for an expo, I was called back early due to a work emergency. I decided not to inform Cassandra, planning to surprise her. I hoped a spontaneous gesture might rekindle our relationship's spark. I bought her favorite flowers and went home, using my key to let myself in. When I didn't find her in the usual places, I headed to the bedroom. There, I saw Cassandra with another man. The shock and pain were indescribable. They hurried to dress, and the man tried to push past me. I grabbed his throat, not to strangle him but to make him understand my anger. I slapped him twice, a reaction that still confounds me. He looked like he wanted to fight back but left when I released him. Turning to Cassandra, I saw her struggling to put on her bra. She avoided my gaze and asked why I had returned early. Her audacity was infuriating. She blamed me for not informing her, claiming she had needs, and that I'd refused her request for an open relationship. I was furious, raising my fist but stopping short of hitting her. Her reaction to my near violence made me realize how far our relationship had deteriorated. I left the house, seeking refuge at a friend's place. He advised me to get a divorce, suggesting I gather evidence of her infidelity to minimize alimony. Cassandra's subsequent text messages, filled with insults and taunts about her affair, only solidified my decision. My friend wisely told me to screenshot these messages before she unsent them. I found a divorce lawyer and started the proceedings, though Cassandra delayed her response, making things more difficult. During this tumultuous time, I met Emily at a bookstore. Our shared love of science fiction led to a blossoming relationship. She was a soothing presence amidst my chaos, and we began dating. As the divorce dragged on, Cassandra's behavior escalated. One day, after a pleasant outing with Emily, we were nearly run over by a car in a parking lot. The driver was Cassandra. She had intended to harm Emily, perhaps even kill her. The incident was captured on CCTV, and witnesses corroborated our account. Cassandra was arrested and eventually sentenced to 12 years in prison for attempted murder. The divorce finally moved forward, and the judge awarded Cassandra nothing, recognizing her malicious actions. With her out of my life, I was able to move on fully. Emily and I found a new home together, and she remained a source of joy and stability. Despite the trauma, I emerged stronger and more appreciative of genuine love and commitment. A military man's tale of betrayal and new beginnings. I married my high school sweetheart, and thought our love would endure anything. However, life took a harsh turn when I left for Army training camp. During the 10 weeks apart, my wife became distant, rarely calling or texting. When I finally returned, I noticed her constant texting, which raised my suspicions. Soon after, she told me she might be pregnant. I was initially excited, but my joy turned to dread when the conception date didn't align with my presence. Confronting her, she admitted to cheating on me. I was devastated and told her to leave my car in the hospital parking lot after her appointment. Her mother, initially supportive, was horrified when she learned of her daughter's infidelity. I refused to have anything more to do with her. We confirmed through a DNA test that the child wasn't mine, and I pursued a divorce. Years later, after my military service, I found love again with a woman who shared my values. We now own a farm together and are expecting our first child. Meanwhile, my ex-wife is on her 4th child with a new boyfriend. I feel grateful for my new life and the love I have found. Story 3: Betrayed by my best friend and fiancé, found love in an unexpected place. I never imagined that my life would take such a dramatic turn. I was 28, living a stable life with a good job and planning my wedding with my fiancée, Sarah. We had been together for 5 years, and our wedding was just a few months away. We were deeply in love, or so I thought. My best friend Tom had been a part of my life for as long as I could remember. We grew up together, went to the same schools, and even worked at the same company for a while. He was my confidant, my brother from another mother. Our bond was unbreakable, or so I believed. One Friday night, Sarah told me she was going out with some friends for a girls' night. I didn't think much of it, as it was a common occurrence. Tom called me shortly after, suggesting we grab some drinks and catch up. It had been a while since we had a guys' night, so I agreed. We met at our favorite bar, a cozy little place downtown. We reminisced about old times, shared a few laughs, and had a couple of beers. As the night wore on, I noticed Tom seemed a bit off. He was more reserved than usual, and his laughter felt forced. I brushed it off, thinking he might just be having a rough day. Around midnight, I decided to head home. I thanked Tom for the night, and we parted ways. On my way back, I felt a strange urge to stop by Sarah's place. She lived just a few blocks away, and I thought it would be a sweet surprise to see her, and maybe walk her home. As I approached her apartment, I saw a familiar car parked outside. It was Tom's. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was dropping off something for Sarah, or picking up something he left behind. I took a deep breath and walked up to the door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and the sight that greeted me shattered my world. There, in the dimly lit living room, were Tom and Sarah, locked in a passionate embrace. They didn't notice me at first, too engrossed in each other. When they finally did, the look of shock and guilt on their faces was unmistakable. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. My best friend and my fiancé, the two people I trusted the most, had betrayed me. I didn't say a word. I turned around and left, the sound of their frantic apologies echoing behind me. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with a million thoughts. How long had this been going on? How could they do this to me? What was I supposed to do now? The next few days were a blur. I didn't go to work, ignored calls from both Tom and Sarah, and shut myself off from the world. The pain was unbearable, and I felt completely lost. My life had been turned upside down, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. Eventually, I decided to confront them. I needed answers, closure, something to help me make sense of the situation. I met with Sarah first. She was a mess, tears streaming down her face as she apologized over and over. She admitted that the affair had been going on for a few months. She claimed it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, but I couldn't bring myself to believe her. The trust was gone, and with it, any chance of salvaging our relationship. Next, I met with Tom. He was equally remorseful, but his apologies felt hollow. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but nothing he said could undo the betrayal. I told him our friendship was over. He begged for forgiveness, but I was resolute. The damage was done. And in the weeks that followed, I tried to move on. It was incredibly difficult, but I leaned on my family and other friends for support. I threw myself into work, hoping to distract myself from the pain. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life. One day, I received a call from an old college friend, Emily. We hadn't spoken in years, but she had heard about what happened and wanted to check on me. We decided to meet for coffee, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. Emily had always been a kind and understanding person, and talking to her felt like a breath of fresh air. We started seeing each other more often, and I found myself looking forward to our meetings. Emily had a way of making me feel at ease, and she helped me see that there was still hope for happiness. As time passed, our friendship deepened, and I began to realize that my feelings for her were more than just platonic. It took me a while to muster the courage, but I eventually told Emily how I felt. To my relief and joy, she felt the same way. We started dating, and it was a completely different experience from my previous relationship. Emily was genuine, supportive, and loving. She helped me heal in ways I never thought possible. A year later, I proposed to Emily, and she said yes. Our wedding was a small, intimate affair, surrounded by close family and friends. As I stood at the altar, looking into her eyes, I felt a sense of peace and happiness that I had thought was lost forever. Looking back, I realized that sometimes the darkest moments in our lives can lead to the brightest ones. The betrayal by Sarah and Tom was a painful chapter, but it ultimately led me to Emily. I learned the importance of trust, forgiveness, and the resilience of the human spirit. Life has a way of surprising us, and I am grateful for the unexpected turn that brought Emily into my life. Story 4: A Journey of Rediscovery and Healing. I had always thought I had my life figured out. At 30, I was working as a successful financial analyst in New York City, living in a luxurious apartment, and engaged to a beautiful woman named Julia. We had been together for 3 years, and our wedding was planned for the upcoming spring. My life seemed perfect on the outside, but underneath the surface, things were beginning to unravel. The first crack appeared when I noticed Julia becoming increasingly distant. At first I thought it was just the stress of wedding planning, but as weeks turned into months, her coldness only grew. We argued more frequently, and our once passionate relationship began to feel like a business transaction. I tried to talk to her about it, but she always brushed it off, claiming she was just busy with work. One evening, after another argument, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I wandered aimlessly through the city streets, lost in thought. As I walked, I stumbled upon a small park. It was a hidden gem in the bustling city, a serene oasis surrounded by trees and flowers. I found a bench and sat down, letting the calmness of the place wash over me. As I sat there, an elderly man approached and asked if he could join me. His name was Mr. Thompson, and he had lived in the neighborhood for decades. We struck up a conversation, and I found myself opening up to him about my troubles. He listened patiently, offering words of wisdom and encouragement. There was something comforting about his presence, and for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope.